Tyler was mid-sentence when he stopped walking. 1 second, he was speaking calmly to Sophia about a venue for their engagement dinner. The next, his body refused to take another step. Sophia took 2 strides before realizing his arm was no longer beside her. She turned slightly. "Tyler?" He didn't answer. The late summer street was calm. A couple argued gently over which ice cream flavor to buy. A delivery truck idled near the curb. Someone laughed from an open apartment window above. Ordinary life. No tension. No threat. But Tyler's pulse kicked hard against his ribs. 20 feet ahead, Jessica was kneeling on the sidewalk. She wasn't dressed for attention. No designer labels. No dramatic entrance. Just jeans, a fitted top, hair pulled back. She was focused on tying a little girl's shoe with steady patience. Around her stood 2 small boys. 3 children. Tyler's vision narrowed. His breathing shifted first. Slower, then shallow. His fingers, which were resting confidently at his side a moment ago, curled slightly like he was bracing for impact. Jessica stood up. For a fraction of a second, she hadn't noticed him. Tyler had built a name in rooms where men twice his size hesitated before speaking. He negotiated deals without blinking. He controlled territory with a single look. And yet now, he couldn't move. One of the boys laughed, loud, carefree. The sound cut through him more sharply than any threat ever had. The other boy stepped slightly closer to Jessica, protective without being told. The little girl tilted her head while adjusting the newly tied shoe, studying the world like she already understood it. 3 children. Sophia followed his line of sight. "Do you know her?" Tyler didn't answer, because in that moment, a question hit him harder than anything in his past ever had. Why did seeing her feel like losing something he never tried to keep? Jessica finally looked up. Their eyes met. No dramatic reaction, no shock, just recognition. And something else. Strength. If you've ever walked away from someone believing it was the right move, convinced yourself that ambition required sacrifice, only to realize years later life kept moving without you, you understand this kind of silence. It's not loud. It's heavy. Tyler had told himself years ago that leaving Jessica was necessary. His world was complicated, dangerous. He framed it as protection, as logic, as timing. But standing there now, watching her steady those 3 children with nothing but quiet authority, logic felt thin. One of the boys grabbed Jessica's hand. "Mom." The word didn't echo. It landed. Tyler's jaw tightened. "Mom." His mind began calculating automatically. Dates, months, years. The timeline wasn't blurry. It was precise. Triplets. His throat felt dry. Sophia's posture changed beside him. She wasn't confused anymore. She was assessing. Jessica adjusted the stroller handle and brushed hair from the little girl's face. "Jane, careful," she said softly. So that was her name. The protective boy glanced directly at Tyler. His stare was direct, measuring, and something about the shape of his eyes felt familiar. That was the second hit. The first was seeing Jessica. The second was realizing the possibility that those children weren't random. They were connected to him. This isn't just about a powerful man seeing his past. It's about a decision he made years ago standing right in front of him in living, breathing form. Past versus present. Control versus responsibility. Love versus ambition. And here's the real question. If you built everything except the one thing that mattered, did you actually win? If you've ever made a choice you couldn't undo, stay with me on this one, and tell me in the comments, what should he do right now? Walk away again? Or finally face it? Welcome back to Mr. Gerald Family Stories, where powerful stories don't just entertain, they teach life-changing lessons about morals and values. If you're new to this family, thank you for joining us. Please hit the subscribe button because it helps us share stories like this on YouTube. Now let's continue. Tyler did not blink. Jessica had seen him. There was no confusion in her expression, no surprise, just recognition, steady and measured. Sophia stepped closer to him now, lowering her voice. "Tyler, who is she?" He still didn't answer. Jessica rose fully to her feet, brushing her hands lightly against her jeans after tying Jane's shoe. Jane immediately reached for her hand without looking up, instinctive trust. Jackson shifted his stance, moving half a step forward like he had already decided his position. John swayed slightly, distracted by something across the street. Tyler watched the smallest details. Jessica's posture wasn't defensive. It wasn't welcoming either. It was composed. Years ago, she used to look at him with expectation. Now she looked at him with assessment. Sophia followed his gaze to the children. Her eyes sharpened. "How do you know her?" she asked again, this time more carefully. Tyler swallowed once before speaking. "Her name is Jessica." That was all he offered. Jessica began walking toward them, not slowly, not aggressively, just directly. Each step carried history. The street noise continued, traffic humming, doors closing, distant laughter, but the space between them felt sealed off. Tyler became aware of something he had not felt in years: uncertainty. Jessica stopped a few feet away. "Tyler," she said. No hostility, no warmth, just fact. He nodded once. "Jessica." Sophia extended her hand politely. "I'm Sophia." Jessica shook it. Firm. Brief. The children had followed behind her. Jane studied Sophia's ring first. Jackson studied Tyler. John leaned against Jessica's leg. Tyler felt the moment closing in. "How have you been?" he asked. "I'm well," Jessica replied. Her answer was clean. No elaboration. Jane tugged lightly at Jessica's hand. "Mom, can we go home after this?" "Mom." This time the word didn't hit him like a surprise. It settled. Jessica glanced down. In a minute, Tyler's mind had already moved past shock. It was calculating. He didn't need dates written down. He remembered when he left. He remembered the last month they spent together. He remembered the night she told him she wanted something stable, something that didn't depend on fear. The math aligned too clearly. Triplets. 3. He looked at Jackson again. The set of his jaw. The way he held eye contact longer than a child usually would. Tyler crouched slightly, lowering himself to their level. Sophia's hand tightened subtly around her clutch. "What are your names?" Tyler asked calmly. Jackson answered first. "Jackson." Jane didn't wait. "I'm Jane." John raised his hand slightly, as if in school. "John." Tyler nodded slowly. Jessica watched him carefully. Not protective in panic. Protective in evaluation. Jackson tilted his head. "Do you know my mom?" The question was direct. "Yes," Tyler answered. "We knew each other a long time ago." Jane crossed her arms lightly. "From school?" Jessica intervened gently. "We used to work together." It wasn't a lie. It wasn't the whole truth. Tyler stood back up. Sophia shifted closer. "We actually have somewhere to be," she said, tone controlled. Jessica's eyes flicked to Sophia's ring, then back to Tyler. "You're engaged," she said. "Yes," Tyler replied automatically. The word felt heavier now. Jessica nodded once. "Congratulations." There was no bitterness in it, which unsettled him more than anger would have. John tugged again at Jessica's hand. "Mom." Jessica smiled down at him, soft, effortless. Tyler noticed that smile immediately. It was the same one she used to give him when he was restless about money, about status, about proving himself. Back then she would say, "You don't have to conquer everything." He had ignored that. Now he saw the result of what she built instead. Without him. "Take care of yourself," Jessica said quietly. She meant it. Not as a threat, not as an invitation, just closure. She turned. The children moved with her naturally, no hesitation. Jackson looked back once, not accusing, not afraid, just curious. And that curiosity struck deeper than judgment would have. Tyler stayed still until they reached the corner. Sophia's voice cut through the silence between them. "You didn't tell me you had a past like that." He exhaled slowly. Neither did she. Sophia turned toward him fully now. "Tyler, those children..." He met her eyes. "Yes." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The implication was clear. And for the first time in years, Tyler felt something crack internally. Not weakness, not fear. Control. He had built his life on managing outcomes. But this was an outcome he had walked away from before it had a name. He stared down the street where Jessica disappeared. 3 children. Possibly his. And if they were, then this wasn't about the past returning. It was about the future already living. Emotional peak #1 lands here. Tyler understands the possibility that he is not just seeing Jessica again. He is looking at consequences with faces. Tyler did not move right away. The street kept breathing around him. Cars passed, doors opened and closed. Life continued as if nothing had shifted, but his focus stayed locked on the corner where Jessica and the triplets had disappeared. Sophia adjusted her posture, regaining composure first. "We're going to be late," she said quietly. He nodded once, but didn't start walking. "You didn't say anything," she added. There wasn't much to say. Her eyes narrowed slightly. There seemed like a lot unsaid. Tyler finally turned, and they resumed walking, but the rhythm between them was gone. The easy confidence they had carried minutes earlier now felt forced. Sophia glanced at him again. "Are those kids yours?" The question landed bluntly. "I don't know," he answered honestly. That honesty surprised even him. Sophia studied his face as if looking for weakness, or confirmation, or something she could measure. "You really didn't know?" "No." She let the silence sit, but he could feel her processing. In his world, people rarely ask direct questions without calculating the value of the answer. They reached the end of the block before Tyler stopped again. "I need a minute," he said. Sophia exhaled through her nose. "Tyler, just a minute." He turned and walked back. Behind him, Sophia stayed still. When he reached the side street, Jessica was slower now, guiding the triplets toward the building entrance. He wasn't sure why he followed. Instinct, maybe, or unfinished weight. "Jessica." She paused but didn't turn immediately. When she faced him again, her expression stayed calm. The triplets stood close, sensing the shift without understanding it fully. Tyler kept his voice low. "Can we talk?" Jessica considered him for a moment. "We are talking." He almost smiled at that. She had always been precise with words. "I mean, really talk." She glanced down at the children. "Not here." John leaned against her side. "Mom, can we go inside?" "Soon," she replied gently. Tyler noticed how naturally she balanced attention, listening to him without letting the children feel ignored. Jackson stepped forward slightly. "Are you important?" Jessica's eyebrows lifted. "Jackson," Tyler answered before she could. "Not as much as I thought." The boy studied him, then nodded as if filing the response away. Jane tilted her head. "You look like you know us." Tyler froze for a beat. Jessica stepped in smoothly. "Sometimes adults know each other from long ago." Jane accepted it but kept watching him. Sophia approached from behind, her pace measured. She stopped beside Tyler, offering a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked. Jessica looked at her, then back at Tyler. She understood immediately, the engagement, the distance, the tension. "You should probably go," Jessica said softly. Tyler ignored the suggestion for a moment. "How old are they?" Jessica didn't answer right away. 6, she said finally. The number struck him like a quiet confirmation. 6 years. Exactly. His chest tightened, not with panic, but with realization settling deeper. John tugged at Jessica again. "Mom, I'm hungry." The word echoed differently now. Not just a title, a life built daily through small moments he had never seen. Tyler crouched again, this time slower. "What do you like to do?" he asked the kids. "Soccer," Jackson said. "Questions," Jane replied confidently. John grinned. "Everything." Tyler laughed under his breath before he could stop himself. Jessica watched that moment carefully. Something softened, just briefly. Sophia crossed her arms. "Tyler, we really need to leave." Her tone was controlled, but urgency slipped through. Jessica noticed. "You don't need to explain anything," she said to Tyler. "We're fine." He looked at her sharply. "That's not what this is." "No?" Her voice stayed even. "Because it looks like you're trying to catch up to a life you left." The words landed cleanly. No accusation, just truth. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. She continued, quieter now. "I'm not angry. That chapter ended a long time ago." Tyler felt the weight of that statement. A chapter closed. Without him. Jackson stepped beside Jessica, looking up at Tyler with steady curiosity. Are you gonna see us again? The question caught everyone off guard. Jessica glanced at her son, then at Tyler. Sophia's expression sharpened further. Tyler answered carefully, "If your mom wants that." Jessica held his gaze for a long moment. "I don't make decisions fast anymore," she said. He nodded. "That's fair." She adjusted the stroller handle and turned slightly toward the building entrance. "Take care of yourself, Tyler." He watched her walk away. No rush, no hesitation, just dignity. The triplets followed naturally, their small voices blending together as they talked about dinner and cartoons and things that mattered in their world. Before disappearing inside, Jackson looked back one last time. That look carried no blame, only curiosity. Tyler stood there until the door closed. Sophia spoke first. "You didn't tell me about her. I didn't think it mattered anymore." She studied him. "It matters now." He didn't argue. As they walked away, Tyler's mind wasn't on business or meetings. It was on legacy. Not the one built through deals and fear. The one built quietly through bedtime routines and everyday promises. Reputation could be controlled. Legacy couldn't. And for the first time, Tyler wondered if everything he had built was just noise compared to what he had walked away from. Tyler did not remember the drive home. He remembered red lights, the reflection of buildings sliding across the windshield, Sophia speaking once or twice beside him, but none of it stayed. By the time he stepped into his penthouse, the silence felt manufactured. The place was flawless. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city, clean lines, expensive art placed with intention. Everything curated, everything controlled. He loosened his tie slowly and walked toward the window. Below him the city stretched wide and obedient, streets like veins, lights blinking in order, movement predictable from this height. Earlier that afternoon, he had stood on a sidewalk where life felt unpredictable. That difference bothered him. Sophia set her purse down on the marble counter. "You're not talking." "I'm thinking about her." He didn't answer. She walked closer, heels quiet against the polished floor. "If those children are yours, we need to handle this strategically." The word strategically pulled him back to the present. "They're children," he said. "And that makes it simpler?" She replied. He turned to face her fully now. "No," he said calmly. "It makes it real." Sophia studied him. "You didn't even know." "That doesn't change what they are." She exhaled, clearly frustrated but careful not to show too much. "We have plans, Tyler. Announcements, partnerships. Optics matter." Optics. The word hung between them. 6 years ago, Jessica never talked about optics. She talked about stability. "Why does everything have to be measured?" he asked quietly. "Because that's how you built what you have." He looked around the penthouse. Built. Yes. Acquired. Expanded. Protected. But standing there now, the space felt hollow in a way he hadn't noticed before. Sophia crossed her arms. "Are you seriously questioning your entire life because of one encounter?" It wasn't just an encounter. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she walked toward the bedroom. "Think clearly," she said before disappearing down the hallway. Emotions, cloud judgment. The bedroom door closed. Tyler remained standing by the glass. He replayed the afternoon carefully, not emotionally. Jessica's posture, Jackson's stare, Jane's questions, John's trust. 6 years. His mind moved backward. He saw a smaller apartment. Not luxurious. Not impressive. Just functional. Jessica sitting at a kitchen table with papers spread out, explaining her plan to invest in property instead of chasing status. "We build something stable first," she had said. "Then we expand." He remembered pacing, restless. "Stability doesn't win," he told her back then. "Dominance does." Jessica had looked at him calmly. Dominance over who? That question irritated him at the time. He wanted scale, influence, recognition. She wanted structure. The night he left wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no slammed doors. He stood near that apartment window, similar to the one he stood beside now, and said, "My life is getting complicated. You deserve something cleaner." Jessica had studied him for a long time before answering. "Is that what you're telling yourself?" He didn't reply then. He simply walked out, convinced he was protecting her from what he was becoming. Or so he believed. Now, years later, standing in a penthouse built on the ambition he chose over her, he asked himself a question he never allowed before. Was it protection? Or was it fear? Fear that he couldn't be both powerful and present. Fear that intimacy required vulnerability he didn't want to give. Fear that someone who challenged him would slow him down. He rubbed his face slowly. Jessica didn't look slowed down. She looked steady. Her apartment wasn't towering over the city. It didn't need to. It was rooted. He thought about Jackson's direct gaze. Are you important? The question replayed. He had spent years proving importance to people who feared him. But to a 6-year-old boy, importance meant something else. Showing up. Answering honestly. Being there tomorrow. Tyler moved away from the window and poured himself a glass of water instead of something stronger. The choice felt deliberate. He walked through the penthouse slowly, noticing details he had ignored for years. The echo when he stepped into the living room. The absence of personal noise. No scattered toys. No crayon drawings on the fridge. No half-finished homework left on the table. Everything perfect. Everything quiet. Across town, he imagined Jessica guiding the triplets through bedtime routines. Jackson asking questions. Jane negotiating for 5 more minutes awake. John laughing at nothing. Life in motion. Here, life was preserved in glass. His phone buzzed. A message from one of his advisors about a meeting tomorrow morning. Another about a deal that required his approval. All of it urgent. None of it felt as urgent as the realization forming in his chest. If those children were his, he hadn't just missed milestones. He had missed identity. Father. The word formed slowly in his mind. He sat down for the first time since entering the penthouse. Not from exhaustion. From weight. He didn't feel panic. He felt responsibility. It was unfamiliar. Responsibility in his world meant overseeing operations, protecting territory, managing risk. This was different. This was personal. This was irreversible. He thought about Jessica saying, "We're fine." She didn't need him. That fact humbled him more than accusation would have. He had built an empire believing strength meant independence. But independence without accountability felt incomplete now. The night stretched on. He didn't turn on the television. He didn't make calls. He sat in silence long enough to hear his own thoughts clearly. 6 years ago, he chose expansion over intimacy. Tonight, he understood something uncomfortable. Expansion without presence leaves gaps. And those gaps grow. As the city lights flickered outside his window, one truth settled in with quiet certainty. If those children were his, then walking away once didn't mean he could keep walking. For the first time in years, Tyler wasn't planning his next move. He was questioning who he had become, and whether that man deserved a second chance. Responsibility had entered the room. It did not ask permission. Morning arrived without ceremony. Tyler had barely slept. Across the city, Jessica was already awake. The apartment lights came on before sunrise, not harsh, just enough to move the day forward. Jackson was first out of bed. He didn't rush. He liked structure. He folded his blanket with more care than most adults and walked into the kitchen where Jessica was already preparing breakfast. "You're up early," she said without turning. "I had a thought," he replied. She smiled slightly. "About?" He leaned against the counter. "That man yesterday." Jessica didn't freeze. She cracked eggs into a bowl calmly. "What about him?" Jackson hesitated. He looked like he wanted to say something. Jessica placed the bowl down. Sometimes adults carry things they don't know how to say. Jackson absorbed that quietly. Jane entered next, hair slightly undone, eyes alert immediately. She didn't ease into mornings. She assessed them. "Are we changing plans today?" she asked. "No," Jessica replied. "Same schedule." Jane nodded, satisfied. John stumbled in last, half awake and smiling for no reason. He climbed onto a chair and announced, "I dreamed about pancakes." Jessica laughed softly. "That's convenient." The kitchen filled with movement. Plates sliding, juice poured. Backpacks checked, shoes aligned near the door. No rush, no chaos, just rhythm. Jessica checked her phone briefly, a reminder about a property walkthrough later that afternoon. Another message confirming a consulting call in the evening. Her calendar wasn't empty. It was balanced. She had built it that way. After Tyler left years ago, she allowed herself time to grieve. She didn't hide from it. She felt it fully. Then she reorganized her life with precision. Education first, then investment, then ownership, not flashy risks, measured expansion. Her first property was small. The second required more negotiation. She learned contracts line by line. She asked uncomfortable questions in rooms where people assumed she wouldn't. Trust became currency. Consistency became reputation. Now, her income flowed from assets she controlled, and every decision ran through one filter. Will this protect stability, not status? Stability. Jackson zipped his backpack. Are we going to the center after school? Yes, Jessica answered. Jane looked up from tying her laces. Is he going to be there? Jessica paused just long enough to register the weight of the question. I don't know, she said honestly. John swung his legs under the table. He seemed nice. Jessica crouched slightly to meet his eyes. Nice is shown over time. John nodded, as if that made perfect sense. On the walk outside, Jackson positioned himself slightly ahead. Jane walked beside Jessica, asking about mortgage interest rates because she had overheard part of a phone call the night before. John skipped along the edge of the sidewalk, narrating his own imaginary race. 3 distinct personalities. Jackson carried quiet responsibility beyond his years. He watched entrances, not anxiously, protectively. Jane collected information like tools. She didn't accept vague answers. John offered joy freely. He assumed good, until proven otherwise. Jessica observed all of it without interrupting their development. At the community center, people greeted her by name. Morning, Jessica. Morning. You still good for Saturday? Yes. There was no awe in their voices, just familiarity. Her influence wasn't built on intimidation. It was built on showing up. Meanwhile, in a high-rise across town, Tyler was already in his office. He had not addressed what happened the night before with anyone, but he had opened a private file. Dates, travel logs, calendar entries from 6 years ago. He reviewed them without emotion. The timeline aligned cleanly. Too cleanly. He leaned back in his chair. Across the city, Jessica helped John hang his backpack on a hook too high for him. She listened to Jane debate fairness in playground rules. She watched Jackson hold the door open for younger children without being told. Her world moved forward. Without waiting, Tyler's phone vibrated. Sophia. He ignored the first call. Answered the second. You left before I woke up, she said. I had things to review. A pause. You've been distant. I've been thinking. That's new. He didn't respond to the edge in her tone. She continued, lighter now. We should talk tonight. Properly. We will. He ended the call first. Back at the center, Jessica sat at a table reviewing paperwork while the triplets played nearby. She didn't look over her shoulder constantly. She trusted the space. That trust came from years of building community intentionally. She didn't need Tyler to validate her life. She had already constructed it. Across town, Tyler closed the file slowly. The numbers didn't scare him. The implication did. 2 worlds were moving simultaneously. One built on dominance, one built on discipline. For the first time, Tyler understood they were on a collision course. And this time, walking away wouldn't be as simple. Tyler did not bring up Jessica when he met Sophia that evening. He wanted to see what she would do first. They were seated in a private dining room at a restaurant that catered to people who preferred discretion over noise. The lighting was low, the service quiet, the kind of place where agreements were reached with nods instead of signatures. Sophia looked immaculate, composed, measured. You've been hard to reach today, she said, folding her napkin across her lap. I've been reviewing some things, Tyler replied. Business? Personal? That caught her attention. She didn't react dramatically. She adjusted her posture slightly, the way someone does when shifting into negotiation. About yesterday? She asked. Yes. The waiter poured wine. Neither of them touched it immediately. Sophia studied him carefully. You said you didn't know. I didn't. And now? Tyler held her gaze. Now I know the timing makes it possible. She didn't blink. Possible, she repeated. Not certain. Correct. She leaned back. Have you confirmed anything? No. Do you plan to? The question wasn't emotional. It was strategic. He noticed that. That depends, he said calmly. On what? On what it changes. Sophia tapped her fingers once against the table. It changes everything. He didn't respond. She continued. We're weeks away from formal announcements. There are people aligned with us because of stability. Optics matter in your position. My position, he echoed. Yes, she said firmly. You're not just a man walking down a street. You represent structure. Tyler watched her closely now. You're concerned about perception, he said. I'm concerned about risk. Children aren't risk. She didn't hesitate. Unknown children tied to your past are. The wording was deliberate. Unknown children. Tied to your past. Not once did she say their names. Not once did she ask about them personally. Tyler leaned forward slightly. What would you do? If the first were you? She replied. Yes. I would verify privately. Contain it. Control the narrative before it controls you. Control. Narrative. Contain. The language was familiar. It was the language of his world. But something about hearing it applied to Jackson, Jane, and John unsettled him. Sophia lifted her glass but still didn't drink. You built everything by staying ahead of threats. They're not threats. She held his eyes. You don't know that. That was the moment. Not loud. Not explosive. Just a shift. Tyler saw it clearly. Sophia wasn't asking what was right. She was asking what was advantageous. And if they are mine? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then you have to decide whether they fit into the life you're building. Fit. As if they were furniture. He sat back slowly. They're not an accessory. Sophia's expression tightened for the first time. I didn't say they were. You implied it. A thin silence stretched between them. She lowered her voice. Tyler, I'm trying to protect what we're building. We? He asked. Yes. Our future. And where do they exist in that future? She held his gaze but didn't answer directly. That depends on how disruptive this becomes. There it was. Not cruelty. Calculation. Tyler realized something in that moment, not about the children. About her. He had chosen Sophia because she never asked about the shadows in his life. She accepted late nights. She respected boundaries. She admired his discipline. But admiration without challenge felt different now. Jessica used to question him. Sophia reinforced him. The difference mattered. Have you contacted her? Sophia asked. No, you should. The longer this sits, the more unpredictable it becomes. You're worried about unpredictability. I'm worried about weakness. The word landed sharply. He didn't react outwardly, but internally, something aligned. Weakness. Was wanting to understand his children weakness? Was responsibility weakness? Sophia reached across the table, placing her hand lightly over his. I need you focused, she said. Not distracted. He removed his hand slowly, not abruptly. I am focused. On what? He met her eyes evenly. The truth. For the first time that evening, Sophia didn't have an immediate response. She shifted tactics. Then handle it, she said calmly. But handle it decisively. The meal continued, but the warmth between them did not return. Conversation stayed technical. Upcoming meetings, investment updates, public appearances. Not once did she ask what Jackson liked. Not once did she wonder how Jane spoke. Not once did she mention John. When dinner ended, they walked outside together. Sophia paused before getting into the car. Just remember, she said, smoothing her coat, emotion clouds judgment. He looked at her carefully. And lack of emotion clouds humanity, he replied. She held his gaze a second longer than usual. Then she stepped into the car. As it drove away, Tyler remained on the sidewalk for a moment. He replayed the dinner not for what was said, but for what wasn't. There was no curiosity about the children, no concern about Jessica's well-being, only concern about positioning, influence over intimacy, control over connection. For the first time, suspicion didn't feel paranoid. It felt earned. He had built an empire by reading people precisely, and tonight he read distance, not between him and Jessica, between him and Sophia. Tyler waited 2 days before acting, not out of hesitation, out of intention. He wanted the next meeting with Jessica to be deliberate, not accidental. No crowded street, no interrupted moment, no Sophia standing beside him measuring consequences. Late afternoon sunlight settled over the neighborhood as he parked a block away from the community center. He remained in the car for a moment, watching families come and go. Parents carrying bags, children running ahead, conversations about homework and groceries instead of deals and leverage. Ordinary movement. He realized he didn't know how long it had been since he watched people live without calculation. Inside, the community center hummed with activity. Basketballs bounced in a nearby gym. Music drifted from another room. Volunteers moved through hallways with practiced familiarity. Tyler stood slightly out of place in his tailored jacket, but no one seemed intimidated. A few people glanced at him, then went back to what they were doing. That surprised him. Reputation meant nothing here. He spotted Jessica near a table stacked with folders and donation forms. She was speaking with another volunteer, calm and focused. When she turned and saw him, she didn't look startled. She simply ended her conversation and walked toward him. "You could have called," she said. "I didn't know if you'd answer." "I probably would have," she replied. Her honesty caught him off guard. The triplets were nearby. Jackson was helping a younger child tie a shoe, patient but serious. Jane sat at a table sorting colored markers into exact groups. John chased a ball that had rolled across the room, laughing loudly when he nearly tripped. Tyler watched them quietly. "They like it here," he said. "It's steady," Jessica replied. "Kids need that." She crossed her arms lightly. "So, why are you here?" He took a breath. "I need to understand." "Understand what?" "Everything." Jessica held his gaze for a moment before speaking. "You left because you said your life was dangerous," she said calmly. "You told me I deserved something safer." He nodded slowly. "You made your choice," she continued. "I accepted it." Tyler looked down briefly. "I thought I was protecting you." Jessica tilted her head slightly. "Were you?" He didn't answer immediately. Across the room, John laughed again. Jackson called him back before he ran too far. Jane glanced up briefly, making sure everyone was where they should be. Jessica noticed Tyler watching them. "They're good kids," she said softly. "They seem grounded. They have structure." He hesitated, then asked, "Do they know about me?" Her expression stayed neutral. "They know there was someone who made a different choice." The sentence was clean, without bitterness. "That's all?" "For now." Tyler nodded. He expected anger, accusation, something sharp. Instead, she offered balance. "You're not the villain in their story," she said quietly. "But you're not part of it either. Not yet." The words landed harder than blame. He looked around the room again. Parents talking nearby. Kids arguing over a board game. Jessica moving effortlessly between responsibility and warmth. It felt real in a way his world often didn't. "I didn't realize what I walked away from," he admitted. Jessica gave a small, thoughtful pause before answering. "No, you didn't. Not cruel. Just true." Jackson noticed Tyler now and approached cautiously. "You came back," he said. Tyler knelt slightly to meet his eyes. "I said I might." Jackson studied him. "Most adults forget." Tyler glanced toward Jessica. "I'm trying not to." Jane joined them, arms crossed. "Are you going to stay long?" "I don't know yet," Tyler said honestly. She nodded like that made sense. John ran over and stopped suddenly when he recognized Tyler. "You're the guy from the street." Tyler smiled despite himself. "Yeah." John grinned. "Do you like soccer?" "I used to play." "Then you should watch me," John declared, before running off again. Tyler stood back up slowly. Jessica watched the exchange carefully. "They decide for themselves," she said. "I can see that." She lowered her voice. "I'm not going to force anything, and I'm not going to rush trust. I'm not asking you to." She looked at him directly. "Then what are you asking?" He thought for a moment before answering. "Permission to understand what this life looks like." Her expression softened slightly, though caution remained. "This life isn't dramatic," she said. "It's routine. School pickups, bills, community meetings, sickness at midnight. Showing up when you're tired." He nodded. "I want to see it." Why? He hesitated. Because I don't think I understood what mattered before. Jessica studied him carefully, searching for performance. Whatever she saw, it made her relax just a little. You're curious, she said. Yes. Curiosity isn't commitment. I know. She glanced toward the triplets again. Then start there, she said. No promises, no big declarations, just honesty. A long silence settled between them, but this one felt different from the silence on the street days earlier. Less heavy, more open. Tyler watched Jackson helping John again, Jane correcting both of them with quiet authority. He felt something unfamiliar. Not control, not strategy. Interest. Real interest in moments that didn't increase power or profit. Jessica gathered her folders. We're heading home soon. He nodded. I won't keep you. She paused before turning away. You can visit again, she said. If you come as yourself, not as the man who needs to control everything. He met her eyes. I'm trying to figure out who that is. She gave a small, almost sympathetic smile. Good. Start there. As she walked away to help the kids gather their things, Tyler remained standing in the middle of the room. He realized he wasn't drawn to Jessica because of what they used to be. He was drawn to what she had built. Ordinary life, structure, meaning without fear. For the first time, he didn't want leverage. He wanted understanding. And that difference changed everything. Tyler returned to his office later than usual. The building was quiet. Most of his staff had left. City lights reflected across the glass walls, turning the room into a mirror. He preferred working alone when something felt off. For the past week, small details had started bothering him. Meetings that rivals seemed unusually prepared for. Negotiations collapsing before they began. Information appearing in places it should not have reached. At first, he assumed coincidence. Now he didn't. He sat at his desk and opened a secure device rarely used except for internal reviews. Files loaded slowly. Communications, schedules, access logs. Patterns emerged. Not dramatic. Precise. Someone close had been sharing information. He leaned back, expression unreadable. The timestamps matched moments when only a few people had access. One name appeared repeatedly. Sophia. He stared at the screen longer than necessary. Not because he couldn't believe it, because part of him already had. His phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. Are you still coming over tonight? He didn't answer. Instead, he continued reading. Encrypted exchanges. Brief messages routed through secondary channels. References to meetings he never publicly disclosed. It wasn't emotional betrayal. It was strategic. He closed the device slowly. His first instinct years ago would have been immediate retaliation. Now he felt something different. Clarity. He called her. Tyler, she answered smoothly. I was wondering if you'd forgotten me. We need to talk, he said. A pause. Now? Yes. Sophia arrived at the penthouse 20 minutes later. She stepped inside like nothing was wrong, setting her coat down carefully. You sound serious, she said lightly. Tyler remained standing near the window. I reviewed some files tonight. She tilted her head. Business trouble? You tell me. The room went quiet. Sophia didn't panic. She walked closer, studying him. What exactly are you asking? He held her gaze. Who are you reporting to? For the first time since he'd known her, her expression stalled. Only briefly. Then she smiled, controlled, almost impressed. You've been looking into me. I looked into leaks. And found me. He nodded once. She exhaled slowly. You always did underestimate how predictable you are when emotions get involved. The sentence confirmed everything. You didn't deny it, he said. There's no point. Tyler's voice stayed calm. Why? Sophia moved to the bar and poured herself water. No trembling hands. No desperation. Because power shifts, she said. People position themselves accordingly. And you positioned yourself through me. She turned. I positioned myself near influence. That's different. He almost laughed but didn't. So this was never personal. She shrugged lightly. Personal complicates things. There it was again. The absence of emotion. He remembered their dinner conversation. Her concern about optics. Her inability to see children, as anything but risk. It all aligned. You chose the wrong moment to get distracted, she said quietly. You started looking backward. That makes leaders vulnerable. Tyler considered her words carefully. She was right about one thing. He had been emotionally blind, but not in the way she thought. He had ignored the absence of warmth because it felt convenient. I asked myself something recently, he said. Why I chose people who never challenged me emotionally. Sophia raised an eyebrow. And it made me easier to manipulate. She smiled faintly. Now you're learning. The realization settled without anger. Emotional distance had felt like strength. It had actually been a weakness. He walked toward the door and opened it. Sophia watched him. That's it? She asked. We're done, he said. No arguments? No scene? There's nothing left to argue about. Her expression hardened slightly. You're making a mistake. Maybe, he said calmly. But it's mine to make. She picked up her coat slowly. You're changing, she said. Yes. That usually costs people like you everything. Tyler met her gaze evenly. Maybe what I had wasn't worth keeping. She paused for a moment, as if considering whether to say more. Then she walked past him and left without another word. The door closed softly. No shouting, no destruction, just finality. Tyler stood still for several seconds. He didn't feel triumph. He felt exposed. For years he believed control meant avoiding emotional entanglements. Keep things clean. Keep decisions logical. But logic without connection left blind spots. He sat down and stared at the city. Sophia hadn't broken him. She revealed something. When people choose emotional distance, they often attract others who value access over affection. The lesson landed quietly. Emotional blindness creates vulnerability. His phone buzzed again. Messages about meetings tomorrow, problems needing solutions. He ignored them. Instead, his thoughts moved somewhere unexpected. The community center. Jackson's questions. Jane's careful observation. John's easy trust. Jessica's boundaries. That world didn't operate through manipulation. It operated through consistency. For the first time in years, losing something felt like relief. The engagement was over, the illusion of certainty with it. And now there was nothing between him and the questions he had been avoiding. Tyler did not announce that his engagement had ended. He simply stopped wearing the ring. A few days passed before he returned to the community center. This time, he didn't stand at the entrance observing. He stepped inside quietly, hands in his pockets, carrying none of the urgency he once brought into every room. Jessica noticed him almost immediately. She didn't smile, but she didn't look surprised either. You're early, she said. I didn't want to interrupt. She nodded toward a side table stacked with papers. You can sit if you want. The kids are finishing activities. He sat, not at the center of the room, off to the side. That choice alone felt unfamiliar. Jackson spotted him first. He slowed down slightly, studying Tyler before walking over. You came back again, Jackson said. I did. Jackson folded his arms lightly. Do you always keep your word? Tyler thought before answering. Not always. But I'm trying to. Jackson considered that, then nodded once and returned to helping another child stack chairs. Jane approached next, notebook in hand. You didn't answer my question last time, she said. What question? Are you staying long-term or short-term? Tyler blinked. She was serious. I don't know yet, he said honestly. I think that depends on your mom. Jane accepted the answer but added, people should know what they're doing before they start. Then she walked away. Tyler watched her go, impressed. John arrived last, nearly colliding with him. You're here, he said brightly. I am. John climbed into the chair beside him without hesitation. Watch this, he said, jumping up to show off a spin move he had learned in class. Tyler laughed softly. That's good. John grinned as if approval itself was a reward. 3 children. 3 different reactions. Caution. Analysis. Trust. Jessica noticed the pattern too. She leaned against the table beside Tyler, speaking quietly. They're figuring you out. I can tell. Don't rush it. I won't. She studied him briefly. Where's Sophia? Gone. Jessica's expression didn't change much. I'm sorry. You don't have to be. Silence settled between them, comfortable but cautious. The evening moved naturally around them. Parents arrived. Kids packed up. Volunteers locked storage closets. Tyler stayed until the triplets gathered their things. Jackson walked beside him toward the door. "Do you know how to fix bikes?" "A little. Mine makes a weird noise." Tyler nodded. "Maybe we can look at it sometime." Jackson didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed slightly. Outside, Jane walked ahead with Jessica, asking questions about weekend plans. John ran circles around them, until Jessica called him back. Tyler followed at a respectful distance. This wasn't his routine. Not yet. When they reached the apartment building, Jessica stopped. "Thanks for coming," she said. He hesitated. "I didn't do much." "That's the point," she replied. "You showed up without trying to take over." He absorbed that quietly. Jackson looked up at Jessica. "Can he come again?" She looked at Tyler first. "Maybe," she said carefully. The answer satisfied everyone enough for now. Inside the apartment, Tyler noticed details he hadn't before. Shoes lined near the door. School drawings taped neatly to the fridge. A calendar filled with reminders and deadlines. Nothing excessive. Everything functional. Jessica moved naturally through the space, answering questions, preparing snacks, checking homework. Tyler watched, saying little. "Why are you so quiet?" John asked suddenly. Tyler smiled. "I'm listening." John thought about that. "That's good. Sometimes grown-ups talk too much." Jane nodded in agreement, without looking up from her homework. Jessica hid a small smile. Later, while Jackson worked on a math worksheet, Tyler leaned over to help. Instead of giving the answer, he asked, "How do you think it works?" Jackson frowned in concentration. "You're supposed to tell me. I think you already know." After a moment, Jackson solved it himself. He looked slightly proud, but tried not to show it. Tyler recognized something important then. Leadership here wasn't about directing. It was about guiding without controlling. As the evening wound down, Jessica walked him to the door. "You're different," she said quietly. "I'm trying to be." "That's not the same thing." He nodded. "I know." She crossed her arms lightly. "I need you to understand something. I'm listening. You don't just walk back into their lives because you're curious. Trust is earned slowly." "I understand. No promises you can't keep." "I won't make any." She held his gaze for a moment, measuring sincerity. Then she stepped back. "Good." Outside, Tyler paused on the sidewalk. He realized he hadn't thought about business once during the entire evening. No strategies, no deals, no leverage, just conversations about homework, bike repairs, and bedtime schedules. Ordinary life. And it felt heavier and more meaningful than anything he had negotiated in years. He also understood something else. The children were not waiting for him to lead. They were watching to see if he could be present. As he walked away, he felt no urgency to control outcomes, only a quiet desire to return. Fatherhood hadn't arrived through declarations. It had begun in silence. The conversation happened later than either of them planned. The triplets were asleep. The apartment had settled into quiet, the kind that comes only after children finally stop asking for one more story or one more glass of water. Tyler stood near the kitchen counter, unsure if he should sit or leave. Jessica moved calmly through the room, placing dishes into the sink, finishing small tasks before allowing herself to stop. "You don't have to stay," she said without turning. "I know." But he didn't leave. She dried her hands slowly and finally faced him. The room felt smaller now without the noise of the day. No distractions, no interruptions, just truth waiting. "You still haven't asked," Jessica said quietly. Tyler understood immediately. He took a breath. "Are they mine?" The question hung in the air. She held his gaze without hesitation. "Yes." The word landed softly. No dramatic pause, no raised voices, just confirmation. Tyler exhaled slowly, as if something he had already known finally became real enough to touch. He looked down for a moment, processing the weight. Jessica watched him carefully. "I didn't tell you," she said, "because at the time you weren't someone I could depend on." He didn't argue. "You left," she continued, "and you were honest about why. You wanted your life, your ambition. I respected that, even though it hurt." Her voice remained steady. I found out I was pregnant after you were already gone. Then I found out it was 3. A faint smile crossed her face for a second. I was terrified. Tyler's jaw tightened slightly. You never called, he said quietly, not accusing, just trying to understand. Jessica leaned against the counter. I thought about it, she admitted. Many times. Why didn't you? Because I knew the world you were stepping into. I didn't want my children growing up waiting for someone who might show up when it was convenient. He absorbed the words slowly. That sounds fair, he said. It wasn't about punishment, she added. It was about stability. He nodded. That word again, he said softly. It matters, she replied. They stood in silence for a moment. Tyler glanced toward the hallway, where the triplets slept. I missed everything, he said. You missed the beginning, she corrected. That doesn't mean you have to miss everything. The sentence surprised him. It wasn't forgiveness. It was possibility. He looked back at her. Did you ever hate me? Jessica shook her head slowly. No, I was hurt, but hate keeps you tied to the past. I needed to move forward. He let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. You rebuilt everything. I rebuilt myself first, she said. That landed deeper than he expected. Tyler leaned against the wall, quieter now. I thought leaving was the responsible thing, he admitted. I told myself I was protecting you. Jessica tilted her head slightly. From what? My life. She gave him a long, measured look. Or from being vulnerable. The question struck cleanly. He didn't answer immediately. Because she was right. He had feared needing someone more than he feared losing her. The room stayed quiet long enough for honesty to settle fully between them. Finally, Tyler spoke again. What do they know? That there was someone important once, she said. Someone who wasn't ready. He nodded slowly. That's accurate. Jessica watched him closely. You don't need to prove anything tonight, she said. I'm not trying to. Good. Because this isn't about guilt. He looked at her, surprised. It's about responsibility, she continued. And responsibility isn't loud. He nodded. The weight of that word felt different now, not abstract, specific. 3 children sleeping down the hallway. 3 personalities he was only beginning to understand. Jackson's caution, Jane's questions, John's trust. He realized that knowing they were his changed something fundamental, not emotionally dramatic, structurally. His choices now extended beyond himself. He glanced toward the hallway again. Do they deserve to know? He asked quietly. When the time is right, Jessica said. And when you've shown consistency. Fair. Everything with her was measured in reality, not intention. He respected that. You did this without me, he said softly. Yes. Were you ever overwhelmed? She smiled faintly. Every day. But you kept going. I didn't have another option. Tyler considered that. He had always believed strength came from control. Jessica's strength came from persistence. Different worlds, same resilience. The clock ticked quietly in the background. Finally, he straightened. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Jessica's expression softened slightly. Neither did I, she said. You learn by showing up. No grand instructions, no emotional speech. Just truth. He nodded once. As he moved toward the door, she spoke again. Tyler. He turned. Don't make promises tonight, she said. Just come back when you say you will. He met her eyes. I can do that. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then nodded. He stepped outside, into the cool night air. The city looked the same as always. But it felt different. Responsibility was no longer a question. It had names. Jackson, Jane, John. For the first time, fatherhood wasn't an idea floating at the edge of possibility. It was real. And real things demanded action, not words. Tyler walked down the quiet street without rushing. He wasn't planning how to control this situation. He was thinking about how to earn his place in it. Responsibility had moved from theory to reality. And there was no way back from that. Change didn't arrive all at once. It happened quietly, through repetition. Weeks passed, then months. Tyler began showing up exactly when he said he would. No announcements, no explanations, just presence. On Wednesday afternoons he came to the community center. Saturdays he helped with errands when invited. Sometimes he simply sat in the apartment while the triplets finished homework, saying little unless they spoke first. Jessica didn't comment on the consistency. She noticed it. Jackson noticed first. He tested Tyler without warning. One evening, while tightening a loose bolt on his bike, Jackson looked up and asked, "Are you going to stop coming?" Tyler paused before answering. "I don't plan to." "That's not what I asked," Jackson said. Tyler wiped his hands slowly. "I'm trying not to." Jackson studied him for a long moment. "My coach says people quit when things get hard." Tyler nodded. "Your coach is probably right." Jackson tightened his grip on the wrench. "So what happens when this gets hard?" Tyler met his gaze. "Then I keep showing up." Jackson didn't smile, but he handed him the tool without hesitation. That felt like progress. Jane tested him differently. She remembered everything. If he said he would bring a book, she noticed if it was the right one. If he promised to watch her presentation at the center, she checked the time when he arrived. One afternoon she held up her notebook and asked, "You said you'd be here at 4. Tyler checked his watch. 4 o'clock exactly. "I am." She nodded once. Good. There was no praise. Just verification. John, on the other hand, offered trust easily. He leaned against Tyler during cartoons, asked endless questions, pulled him into games without hesitation. "Watch this," John would shout before attempting something reckless. Tyler found himself laughing more than he expected. Jessica watched all of it quietly. She didn't interfere unless necessary. She observed how Tyler adapted. In his old life, he gave orders. Here, he asked questions. Instead of correcting Jackson immediately, he listened to how the boy wanted things done. Instead of answering Jane's rapid questions with certainty, he admitted when he didn't know. With John, he learned patience instead of control. One evening after dinner, Jessica stood at the kitchen sink while Tyler helped clear plates. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know." She glanced over her shoulder. "You're different with them now." "I'm learning." She dried her hands slowly. "Learning what?" "That being there matters more than being right." She didn't respond, but he saw approval flicker briefly before disappearing. Outside the apartment, his other world continued moving. Phones buzzed with decisions needing attention. Meetings piled up. Associates questioned his reduced involvement. Tyler still handled what mattered, but his priorities shifted. He left earlier. He declined things he once considered essential. People noticed. At the community center, no one cared who he was outside these walls. He carried boxes when asked. He helped arrange chairs. No one treated him like someone powerful. And strangely, that felt relieving. One afternoon, Jackson asked while they sat on a bench watching John play soccer, "Why do you always look like you're thinking?" Tyler laughed softly. "Maybe because I didn't think enough before." Jackson kicked at a pebble. "You make mistakes too?" "All the time." The boy nodded thoughtfully. "Good. Adults act like they don't." Jane joined them, holding a worksheet. "You said you'd help me with this." He took it carefully. "Let's look." John ran over moments later and leaned against Tyler's shoulder, sweaty and smiling. "Did you see that goal?" "I did," Tyler said. "Was it good?" "It was perfect." Jessica watched from across the field. She didn't smile openly, but something in her posture softened. Months earlier, Tyler would have tried to prove himself quickly. Grand gestures, big promises. Now he understood that trust didn't grow from intensity. It grew from repetition. The slow rebuild. One evening, as Tyler prepared to leave, Jane stopped him at the door. "You came every week," she said. "Yes." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Are you staying?" Tyler looked down at her. "I'm still earning that answer." She considered it, then nodded. Behind her, John waved enthusiastically. Jackson pretended not to watch, but clearly listened. Jessica stood farther back, arms folded lightly, observing. Tyler understood that her silence wasn't distance anymore. It was evaluation, and for the first time in his life, he didn't resent being evaluated. He welcomed it, because this time he wasn't trying to win. He was trying to belong. The invitation came casually. "We're hosting a fundraiser Saturday," Jessica said, while stacking flyers on the kitchen table. "Nothing fancy, just local families. Food, music, small donations for after-school programs. Tyler nodded. Do you need help? She looked at him for a moment before answering. If you're coming, you're helping. That was the condition. Saturday afternoon, Tyler arrived early, not in a tailored suit, not in the polished version of himself that commanded rooms. Jeans, a plain shirt, sleeves rolled up. He carried folding tables from the storage closet without being asked twice. Someone handed him a box of bottled water. Another person pointed him toward the grill. No one treated him like someone powerful. They treated him like someone useful. It unsettled him at first, then it humbled him. Jackson moved through the crowd confidently, introducing himself to new kids. Jane corrected the placement of donation jars so they were more visible. John danced in front of the speakers, as if the entire event existed for his entertainment. Jessica moved naturally between conversations, checking on volunteers, greeting families, adjusting small details. Tyler watched her operate in this environment. There were no guarded expressions here, no measured pauses before speaking, no layered agendas, just transparency. At one point, a man approached Tyler while he arranged chairs. "Appreciate you coming out," the man said. Tyler nodded. "Happy to help. Jessica talks about stability a lot," the man continued. "It's rare to see someone build like she has." Tyler absorbed that quietly. "I've noticed," he replied. The man smiled. "If you stick around, you'll see what she means." Stick around. The phrase carried weight. Later, while flipping burgers at the grill, Tyler burned the first batch slightly. John noticed immediately. "You messed up," John said with cheerful honesty. Tyler laughed. "I did." Jane inspected the next round carefully. "Turn them sooner." "Yes, ma'am," he replied. Jessica caught that exchange from across the yard. Her smile was small but real. As the afternoon moved forward, Tyler felt something unfamiliar. He wasn't in control. He wasn't directing. He wasn't feared. He was part of something that functioned without hierarchy. Reputation meant nothing here. No one cared about what he owned or who answered his calls. They cared whether he showed up and carried his share. At one point, rain threatened briefly, dark clouds gathering above. Volunteers scrambled to cover equipment. Tyler grabbed tarps without being told. Jackson stood beside him, holding one corner steady. "Do you always fix things fast?" Jackson asked. "In my old life?" Tyler replied. "Yes, and now I'm learning to fix them slower." Jackson considered that. Slower might be better. Tyler smiled faintly. "It usually is." As the event wound down, music lowered and families began packing up. Jessica and Tyler found themselves standing near the edge of the parking lot while the triplets chased each other nearby. "You handled yourself well," she said. "I flipped burgers." "You listened," she corrected. He glanced at her. "That matters here. It matters everywhere," she replied. The air between them felt different now, less guarded, more familiar, not like the past, like something rebuilt. John ran up and grabbed Tyler's hand without thinking. "We're going to the park tomorrow, right?" Tyler looked at Jessica first. She nodded once. "Yes," he told John. Jane walked over. "You better not be late." "I won't." Jackson stood slightly behind them, watching. "You didn't leave early," he said. "No." "Good." Jessica crossed her arms lightly, studying Tyler. "You know this doesn't erase the past," she said quietly, once the kids ran off again. "I know. It doesn't rewrite 6 years." "I know." She looked at him carefully. "But it changes what comes next." The words settled between them gently. He didn't reach for her. He didn't make promises. He simply stood there beside her while the sky cleared. Later that evening, as they walked the triplets home, John reached for Tyler's hand again. Jane walked ahead debating weekend homework. Jackson stayed slightly to Tyler's left, not quite close enough to lean in, but not distant either. Halfway down the block, Jessica slowed slightly. "You're integrating," she said quietly. He raised an eyebrow. "Is that good?" "It depends on whether it's temporary." "It's not." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she asked, "What's happening in your other world?" He didn't dodge the question. "Some people think I've lost focus." "And have you?" He considered it. I've changed priorities. That usually has consequences, she said. I know. They walked in silence for a few steps. Then Jessica said something softer. I never needed you to be powerful. He looked at her. I needed you to be present. The sentence carried no accusation, just clarity. He nodded slowly. I understand that now. She didn't answer, but she didn't disagree either. By the time they reached the apartment building, the distance between them felt smaller. Not because of romance, because of alignment. The world Tyler came from valued dominance. This world valued reliability. And standing on that sidewalk, surrounded by children laughing and neighbors talking, he realized something simple. The strongest version of himself wasn't the one who controlled rooms. It was the one who could stand in one without needing control at all. The pressure started quietly. A missed call from someone who never missed deadlines. A deal delayed without explanation. Meetings rescheduled twice in the same week. Tyler noticed patterns faster than most people noticed problems. His reduced presence was creating space, and in his world, space invited challenges. One evening, he sat alone in his office reviewing reports. Numbers shifted in ways that suggested hesitation from people who once followed his direction without question. His phone buzzed. A message from one of his closest associates. We need to talk. Tonight. Tyler stared at it for a moment before replying. He arrived at the private office downtown later that evening. The room felt familiar. Quiet voices, guarded expressions, expectations hanging in the air. No one said it immediately. Finally, a man spoke. People think you're distracted. Tyler leaned back calmly. People think a lot. This isn't small, the man continued. Rival groups are testing boundaries. They hear you're stepping back. Tyler didn't react. And? He asked. And if you don't respond decisively, you'll lose influence. Influence. The word sounded different now. Another voice added. You built this by being present. Lately you're somewhere else. Tyler thought about soccer games and homework sheets and community events. Yes, he said simply. Silence followed. You're choosing this? Someone asked carefully. I'm choosing where my time goes. The tension thickened. In this world, the first man said, hesitation looks like weakness. Tyler met his gaze. Then maybe this world needs to adjust. The room went still. Years ago, he would have doubled down, proved dominance, sent a message. Now he felt no urgency to escalate. I'm restructuring, he said calmly. Legitimate operations move forward. Anything built purely on fear ends. That statement landed heavily. You're dismantling your own leverage, someone said. I'm redefining it. The conversation ended without resolution. As Tyler walked out, he understood the cost clearly. Influence would weaken. People would question him. Some might walk away. For the first time, he accepted that possibility without resistance. Later that night, he sat in his car outside Jessica's building, engine off, watching lights glow in apartment windows. Inside, he could see movement, shadows crossing the living room, life unfolding in small routines. He didn't go up immediately. He simply watched. His phone buzzed again. Another warning message. Another reminder that stepping away invited risk. He turned the phone face down. When he finally entered the apartment, Jessica noticed the tension immediately. You're quiet, she said. Long day. She studied him but didn't press. The triplets were finishing dinner. John waved enthusiastically. You're late. I know, Tyler said, taking a seat. I'm sorry. Jane glanced at the clock. 7 minutes. He smiled. I'll do better. Jackson watched him carefully. Did something happen? Tyler hesitated, then answered honestly. I made a hard decision today. Good hard or bad hard? Jackson asked. Necessary hard. The boy nodded slowly as if that was enough. During dinner, conversation stayed light. School stories, weekend plans, John's attempt at a joke that made no sense but still earned laughter. Tyler listened more than he spoke. That became his habit. After the triplets went to bed, Jessica joined him on the small balcony. The city hummed in the distance. You're carrying something, she said quietly. He leaned on the railing. My old world is pushing back. She didn't look surprised. What are you going to do? I already decided. And? I'm stepping away from parts of it. She turned toward him fully now. That's not small. No. Are you sure? He thought for a moment. No, he admitted. But I'm certain about why. She waited. I don't want the kids anywhere near that life, he said. And I don't want to be split in half anymore. Jessica exhaled slowly. You're going to lose things. I know. Power. Influence. I know. She held his gaze. And you're okay with that? He looked toward the hallway where the triplets slept. I'm learning what matters more. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Reflective. Jessica leaned against the railing beside him. You're changing faster than I expected. It doesn't feel fast, he said. It never does from the inside. He let that sit. A breeze moved between them. The city lights flickered below. I used to think control meant safety, he said quietly. And now, he turned slightly toward her. Now I think control kept me distant. She nodded once. That distance protected you, she said softly. Yes, but it also isolated you. He smiled faintly. You always saw things clearly. I just saw what you avoided. They stood together in silence for a while longer. Tyler realized that giving up dominance didn't feel like losing. It felt like choosing. Choosing presence over perception. Choosing responsibility over reputation. And though he knew consequences would come, he didn't regret the decision. Inside, John's laughter echoed briefly from a dream before fading again. Tyler listened to it. That sound mattered more than any meeting he had left behind. The sacrifice had already been made. Control was no longer the goal. Integrity was, and somewhere beneath the quiet, he felt the shape of something approaching. A final test he hadn't faced yet. The consequences arrived sooner than Tyler expected. 2 major partnerships dissolved within the same week. An expansion deal he had negotiated for months collapsed without warning. Messages came in rapid succession. Caution, concern, subtle accusations. You're losing ground, one associate told him bluntly during a late-night call. Maybe, Tyler replied calmly. You built this by being decisive. Now you're hesitating. I'm prioritizing. That sounds like weakness. Tyler didn't argue. He had heard the word before. The next day, a more direct warning came. A competitor had moved into territory he once controlled effortlessly, not aggressively, strategically. Filling the vacuum. Tyler sat alone in his office reviewing projections. Numbers didn't lie. His influence was shrinking, not collapsing, but shifting. He closed the files slowly. Years ago, this would have triggered immediate retaliation. A message sent. A display of dominance. Instead, he checked the time. It was nearly 4. Jackson's soccer practice started at 4:30. He left the office without issuing a single order. At the field, Jackson stood near the sidelines, scanning the crowd the way he always did. When he spotted Tyler walking toward him, his posture relaxed. You made it, Jackson said. I said I would. Jackson nodded once. Practice began. Tyler stood near the fence, watching quietly. His phone vibrated in his pocket several times. He didn't check it. John ran over between drills and threw himself into Tyler's side. Did you see that? He asked. I did. Jane approached with a clipboard from the team manager. They need volunteers for snacks next week, she said. Tyler took the pen and signed his name without hesitation. On the sidelines, he noticed 2 men watching him from a distance. Not from the community, from his world. He recognized the look. Assessment. They weren't there for soccer. They were there to measure his shift. Jessica walked up beside him. You're being watched, she said quietly. I know. Is that a problem? It depends on what I choose next. She didn't press further. Jackson scored a goal and looked directly toward Tyler before celebrating. That glance settled something inside him. After practice, as they walked toward the car, his phone rang again. This time he answered. You need to respond, the voice on the other end said urgently. If you don't reclaim space now, you'll lose it permanently. Tyler looked at the triplets climbing into the back seat. I already made my decision, he replied. You're walking away from everything you built. No, he said evenly. I'm walking toward something else. He ended the call. Jessica watched him carefully as he got into the driver's seat. That was final, she said. Yes. She studied him for a long moment. You understand what that means? I do. Back at the apartment, the tension from earlier faded as dinner began. The triplets argued about homework and whose turn it was to wash dishes. Normal chaos. Predictable. Grounded. Later that night, Tyler returned to his office alone one final time. He opened several files, signed transfer documents, reassigned control of operations he once guarded tightly, scaled back investments tied to violence and fear. He wasn't dismantling everything. He was narrowing it, choosing legitimacy over intimidation. His influence would shrink, his wealth might slow, but his conscience would clear. As he closed the final file, a strange calm settled over him. The empire he built had defined him for years. Now he was choosing something harder, to redefine himself. He stepped outside onto the balcony overlooking the city. He knew competitors would interpret this as surrender. Let them. He was not surrendering. He was selecting. Family stability over expansion. Presence over dominance. Responsibility over reputation. For the first time in his life, the most powerful decision he made looked quiet from the outside. But inside, it was seismic. When he returned to Jessica's apartment later that evening, she was sitting at the table reviewing paperwork. He placed his phone face down. "It's done," he said. She looked up. "What is?" "I chose." She held his gaze, searching for doubt. She didn't find any. The emotional tension that had been building for months reached its peak in that quiet room. No explosions. No applause. Just a man who had finally chosen what mattered most. And this time, he wasn't leaving. The apartment was quiet. Jackson, Jane, and John were asleep. The dishwasher hummed softly in the kitchen. A lamp in the corner cast warm light across the living room. Tyler sat at the table across from Jessica. No tension this time. No unfinished questions about the children. No hidden agenda waiting to surface. Just two adults who had lived enough to understand what words cost. "You really did it," Jessica said. "Yes, you stepped back. I stepped away from what didn't fit." She studied him carefully. "That's not small." It didn't feel small. She leaned back slightly in her chair. "Are you afraid?" He didn't pretend otherwise. "Yes." "Of losing power?" "No." She waited. "Of not knowing who I am without it." That honesty shifted something in the room. Jessica nodded slowly. "That's real." He looked at her for a moment, then spoke again. "I loved you badly." She didn't flinch. "I thought intensity was enough," he continued. "I thought ambition proved devotion. I confused providing with being present." Her eyes softened, but she didn't interrupt. "I left because I didn't know how to stay and still feel powerful." Jessica absorbed that quietly. "I didn't need you to feel powerful," she said. "I needed you to feel steady." He nodded. "I know that now." She folded her hands together on the table. "When you left," she said calmly, "I felt small for a while. Like I wasn't enough to make you choose differently." He closed his eyes briefly. "That wasn't it. I know that now," she replied. "But back then, I had to rebuild how I saw myself." Her voice remained steady, not fragile. "I chose stability because I refused to raise children in uncertainty. I chose structure because I needed something solid. And you built it," he said quietly. "Yes, no pride, just fact." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was reflective. "You survived without me," he said. "Yes, and you thrived. I worked." He looked at her carefully. "I don't want to step back into your life as the man who left." "Good," she replied, "because that man doesn't fit here." He allowed himself a small smile. "I'm not asking for what we had." "What are you asking for?" "A chance to build something honest." Jessica stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "You know this isn't a fairy tale," she said. "I know. There will be consequences to your choices. I've accepted that, and I won't protect you from them. I'm not asking you to." She turned slowly to face him. For the first time in the entire conversation, her guard lowered completely. "You hurt me," she said simply. "I know, and I had to become stronger because of it. I see that." She stepped closer. "But I also see that you're not the same man." He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply stood there, "What changed you?" she asked quietly. He thought for a moment. "Seeing what I missed," he said, "and realizing control doesn't mean anything if you're alone." Her eyes held his. "And the children? They're not a burden," he said immediately. "They're clarity." The answer came without hesitation. Jessica searched his face one last time. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She stepped into his space. Not dramatically, not impulsively, deliberately. Their hands brushed first. Neither pulled away. "You can't love recklessly anymore," she said softly. "I won't. You can't disappear when things get uncomfortable. I won't. You can't make promises just to feel better in the moment. I won't." The repetition wasn't dramatic. It was commitment. She rested her forehead briefly against his. Not fantasy. Not a grand reunion. Just recognition. "You're different," she said again. "So are you." She smiled faintly. "Good." The kiss that followed wasn't rushed. It wasn't fueled by nostalgia. It was grounded, earned. Two people who understood what it costs to rebuild trust. When they separated, there were no fireworks. Just calm. "I'm not promising forever," Jessica said gently. "I'm not asking for it," Tyler replied. "Then what are we doing?" He answered honestly. "We're showing up." She nodded once. "That's enough for now." From down the hallway, John's voice murmured in his sleep. Jane shifted in her bed. Jackson turned over. Life continued. Tyler realized redemption wasn't about dramatic gestures. It was about consistent presence. And standing there with Jessica in that quiet room, he understood something fully for the first time. He didn't need to reclaim power. He needed to maintain honesty. Emotional peak #2 lands here, not through intensity, through vulnerability, through choosing to stay. Several months later, the same street carried the same late summer light. Brick buildings still reflected warmth. Storefront windows still caught the sun at the same angle. People still walked past with groceries and coffee cups and conversations that had nothing to do with power. But this time, no one stopped. Tyler walked at an even pace, not scanning for threats, not calculating exits. Jessica walked beside him. Ahead of them, Jackson argued about soccer stats with Jane. John zigzagged across the sidewalk until Jackson pulled him back gently before he stepped too close to the curb. Ordinary, predictable, alive. Tyler remembered the first time he froze on this street. Back then, he had been dressed for control. His world had been sharp, defined by territory and influence. Now he wore nothing that demanded attention, and no one gave him any. A couple passed by without looking twice. A woman held the door open for Jane when she ran inside a small bakery. No one knew who he had been. They only saw who he was now. Jessica nudged him lightly. "You're thinking." "Just noticing," he replied. "About how loud my life used to be. And now," he looked at John, laughing through the bakery window. "Now it feels steady." Jackson stepped outside with a paper bag and handed it carefully to Jane so she wouldn't drop it. John grabbed one of the cookies too soon and got corrected immediately. Tyler watched the interaction without stepping in. Jessica noticed. "You don't intervene as quickly anymore," she said. "I trust them." She nodded. "And yourself?" He took a moment before answering. "More than I used to." They resumed walking. 6 months earlier, stepping away from parts of his empire had felt like risk. There had been consequences. Some connections severed. Some influence faded. But something else had grown. He now attended school meetings without checking his phone. He volunteered at the center without calculating what it gained him. He handled legitimate business quietly, no longer driven by dominance. The noise had reduced. His clarity increased. Jackson slowed slightly to walk beside him. "Coach says we have a tournament next month," Jackson said. "I'll be there," Tyler replied. Jackson glanced up at him carefully. "You don't miss anymore." "No," Tyler said. The boy nodded once, satisfied. Jane joined them. "We have a group project next week. You said you'd help." "I remember." She studied him a second longer than necessary. "Good." John ran back and grabbed Tyler's hand without asking. "Race you to the corner," he shouted before trying to pull him forward. Tyler laughed and let himself be dragged. Jessica watched the three of them ahead of her for a moment before catching up. "You look lighter," she said quietly. "I am." You gave up a lot. He shook his head gently. I let go of what didn't fit. She studied his face. No regrets? He looked at the triplets racing toward the corner. Not about this. They reached the exact spot where months ago everything had shifted. The sidewalk looked the same, but the silence was gone. Now there was laughter, movement, conversation. Jackson stood at the curb, waiting for the signal to cross. Jane adjusted John's grip on the bag of cookies. Tyler rested his hand lightly on Jackson's shoulder. Small gestures, unremarkable to strangers, meaningful to him. The light changed. They crossed together. Halfway across the street, Tyler felt something settle inside him fully. Not ambition, not regret. Alignment. He once believed success meant building something no one could take from him. Now he understood something different. Legacy wasn't built in boardrooms or back rooms. It was built in repetition, showing up when tired, choosing restraint when pride pushed for dominance, listening when speaking felt easier. He glanced at Jessica. She met his eyes briefly. No grand declarations, no dramatic music swelling in the background, just two people walking forward at the same pace. Back on the sidewalk, John tugged his hand again. Are you staying forever? John asked suddenly. Tyler crouched slightly, meeting his gaze. I'm staying as long as I'm needed. John considered that answer carefully. Okay, he said finally, as if that was enough. Jane rolled her eyes lightly. That's not how forever works. Jackson smirked. Tyler laughed. Jessica shook her head affectionately. They continued walking. This time the street didn't go silent. It stayed alive. Tyler realized that the first time he stood here, he saw consequences. Now he saw continuation. He didn't need to control the future. He needed to participate in it. And that was something no empire had ever taught him. As they disappeared down the block, nothing dramatic happened. No rivals watching from a distance, no urgent calls demanding decisions. Just family moving forward. And that was enough. If this story made you reflect on a decision you once thought was right, if it reminded you that strength isn't about dominance but presence, then stay connected with this family. Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't expansion, it's accountability. Let me know in the comments what moment hit you the hardest. And if you believe in showing up even after you failed, make sure you stay part of Mr. Gerald Family Stories. The street is no longer silent, it is alive. And this time Tyler is walking in it, not alone, not ahead, but beside the people who define his real legacy.